When a cease-and-desist letter showed up at Karen Mitchell's doorstep that Wednesday morning, certified mail, signature required, it wasn't mere paper. It was a statement of boundaries. Sarah, my lawyer, had written it with precision, precise, courteous, and dripping with legal poison. The sort of letter that might make even the most intransigent HOA despot hesitate. It laid out each instance of harassment, each inch of trespass, each false complaint she'd made. The last sentence was the kicker. Any further violation will lead to immediate civil and criminal proceedings. Karen had 7 days to answer in writing. She didn't. Rather, the next morning at 7 a.m., she showed up at my front door, bathrobe, slippers, and fury in her eyes, waving the letter like a weapon. "You can't threaten me," she barked, her voice trembling with outrage. "I'm protecting this community from people who think they can ignore our standards." That was the moment it hit me. She truly believed her power extended onto my land. Either she had been manipulated or she had manipulated everyone else. I remained composed. "Mrs. Mitchell," I replied calmly, "please have all communication go through my attorney." And I shut the door, slow, firm, deliberate. My security cameras recorded it all, her pacing, screaming, arguing about whether to press the bell again. That one action turned her from a nuisance into a legal liability. She had moved from paper intimidation to in-your-face intimidation. That evening, exhaustion struck me worse than ever before. There had been months of stress eating at me, the kind that finds its way into your bones. But with it came something else, determination. This was no longer about property. It was about principle. Bullies such as Karen feed on silence. They triumph when good people tire. I was not going to be one of them. That day, Sarah phoned, voice crisp, desperate. She just broke the letter. "That's harassment, possibly intimidation. I'm getting an emergency restraining order filed before she gets more aggressive again." We had proof. Months of video. Trespass recordings. Witnesses. Now we had evidence of intimidation. But Karen was not one to take a step back. She was the type who doubled down. Within hours, she called for an emergency HOA board meeting to address, she'd said, the attack on our community authority. And that's when I knew I'd go, not to debate, but so the truth would be heard. The Meadowbrook Community Center was full one evening. Approximately 60 residents occupied the room, speaking nervously among themselves. The fluorescent lights above flickered with a sickly green light that equaled the tension. Crossed arms, narrowed eyes. It was more of a trial than a meeting. Karen sat at the head table, surrounded by 4 uncomfortable board members. Her body screamed control, chin up, shoulders back, a mask of smug confidence barely containing panic. It was then that I understood. People did not follow her because of a rule. They followed because they were afraid. Karen stood, shaking papers in her hand. "This man," she declared, pointing straight at me, "has made a personal attack on this community. He won't enforce our bylaws. He's sabotaging our order." Her voice boomed. The crowd shifted uneasily. And then there was the map. A crude, drunken doodle in which HOA lines stretched miraculously across creeks, over fences, and onto private property, including mine. It was delusional and passed off as power. And she thought so. When she'd done, the room hummed with tension. David Thompson, the chair of the HOA, groaned. "You'll have 5 minutes to respond," he said grudgingly. I went up front, folder clutched under my arm, the actual documents. County survey, property deed, assessor's maps, all marked and stamped neat. "Thank you," I started. My tone level even. "I just want the truth on record." I set the documents on the projector. Cold, official, incontrovertible. The crowd pushed forward as the screen was filled with certified seals and signatures. Karen's hand-scribbled fantasy disappeared in an instant. David's face turned white. He glanced from the screen to Karen, comprehension dawning. She'd lied to them for years. Karen banged her hand down on the table. "Those documents don't count. We control this whole community." Her voice broke. The arrogance had vanished, replaced by desperation. David called recess. When the board came back, their response was curt. "All enforcement action outside HOA boundaries is hereby suspended pending review." In simpler words, they'd capitulated. Karen stood motionless. You could practically hear her world shatter. Folks started whispering, some even apologizing to me for having trusted her deception. But Karen? She didn't halt. She spiraled. In the following days, she began making private inspections, prancing about like a one-woman code enforcer, clipboard, camera, and delusion in tow. And then there was Sarah's phone call. The judge reviewed your file. Temporary restraining order issued. Full hearing set. And he's interested in civil rights implications. That hearing would alter the course of my life. But Karen's fixation only grew more intense. She began leaving phony citations on vehicles parked near my property. She trespassed once more, snapping pictures, grumbling about standards. And then the worst bit, her Facebook updates. Public ones. She published my address, pictures of my house, and ranted about watching problem residents. Sarah laughed with incredulity. She just made a public record of stalking. She's done. Nevertheless, the breaking point came one quiet weekday. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, whispered, "Karen's in your backyard. She's measuring your shed." I sprinted home, and there she was. Tape measure in one hand, phone in the other. "Mrs. Mitchell," I said, steady voice, "you're trespassing. Leave now." She spun round, eyes flashing. "I have every right to inspect for zoning violations." I gave her 30 seconds. She took another photo. Deputy Martinez arrived minutes later. He knew the story, same officer who'd handled her earlier complaints. Karen tried again. "I'm conducting an inspection." The deputy cut her off. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for trespassing." Click. The cuffs snapped shut. Karen's face turned white. The crowd that had gathered outside watched in stunned silence. Sarah called it legally perfect. We had it all: criminal trespass, harassment, and video evidence. The arrest provided us with bargaining power. The court hearing the next day wasn't merely about peace, it was about justice. That Thursday morning, the courthouse was abuzz. Civil cases filled the docket, but none as volatile as ours. Sarah came with a binder as thick as a phone book. I held one flash drive, the video that would be the end of it. Karen, hunched shoulders, held a slender manila folder across from me. Her public defender had the look of having just met her. Judge Morrison was cool and intent-eyed. He opened the case. "Mrs. Mitchell," he announced, "you are charged with harassment, trespassing, and false impersonation of authority." Sarah started in. Her voice was ice-edged. She put it all out there: the survey, the maps, the violations of the restraining order, the Facebook postings. When the security footage was played back, Karen yelling at Deputy Martinez as she was being handcuffed, the courtroom fell silent. Karen's attorney muttered something about misunderstanding. It died on impact. Then the judge asked the question, the one that broke her fantasy. "Mrs. Mitchell, do you have any document that establishes your authority beyond the HOA boundary?" Karen, shaking, held up her hand-sketched map. The judge glared. "This," he said gruffly, "is a sketch, not law." Karen's voice broke. "I don't need surveys to know where our authority lies." The courtroom was stunned. It was finished. Witness upon witness attested to all of it: David Thompson, Mrs. Patterson, others who'd been issued fraudulent citations. At last, Judge Morrison handed down the verdict. "Mrs. Mitchell, your misuse of fictional power inflicted actual damage. You are guilty of harassment, trespassing, and fraud. You are never to set foot on this property again or hold any HOA office." It was done. Justice, pure and clean. The consequences followed quickly. The Meadowbrook HOA disintegrated within weeks. Contracts were nullified. Signs came down. 8 years of illusory authority destroyed in one night. Karen sold her house to settle the settlements. Her probation involved community service, poetic justice, scrubbing the very park she once dominated through terror. Months afterward, I was sitting on my porch, coffee mug in hand, the sunrise breaking over the oak tree my grandfather planted many years ago. The neighborhood was finally at peace. No citations, no threats, just serenity for the first time in years. The restraining order was made permanent after 2 violations. She finally discovered that actual law carries more weight than fictitious authority. The case went viral, homeowners everywhere posting it as evidence. HOA power stops where private property starts. The neighborhood flourished once more. Children played in driveways. Neighbors smiled. Laughter filled the air. The HOA was erased, and respect had been installed. Individuals started coming to see me, inquiring as to how we had done it. I explained to them all the same thing. Bullies win when you remain silent. But once you get the law, they fall apart quickly. I copied all of the documents, the cease-and-desist, the restraining order, the verdict into one binder. The icon of a boundary is maintained, not merely drawn. The ancient oak tree stood firm, its roots planted deep in earth that was, without a doubt, mine. My grandfather's quote rang in my mind. Boundaries don't keep people out. They help everyone know where they stand. Karen never knew that lesson, and it cost her everything. Now, that 42-foot line along my property and the former HOA property line does indeed feel like a monument, one of victory, not division. Because this time, the line was respected. Neighbor Wars HQ outro script. If you like this actual fight for property rights, like this video, subscribe for more astounding true tales, and share this video with a friend who enjoys a good plot twist. This is Neighbor Wars HQ, where every fence line tells a story.